from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, where I've had the barbecue out twice in 1 week. Now, if that isn't a sign of summer, I don't know what is. Unfortunately, all that's about to change just as we've got the biggest week in Test cricket for some time, because we've got a very rare women's test happening in Bristol between England and India, and the World Test Championship final is being staged down in Southampton in a bio bubble. I reckon they might hope that it is a real bubble by the end of the week if the predicted rain comes.
Alister Nicholson in for Jim Maxwell for the ABC in Melbourne. In Australia, the national men's team in Brisbane at the moment preparing for a white ball series in the West Indies. That's going to take place in a few weeks' time, but it's going to take place without some stars of Australian cricket. So they've foregone the opportunity to take part in that tour, and some very good players among them. Steve Smith has an elbow injury, but a number of others, a bit of cricket bubble fatigue, it would appear, and many of them played in the IPL. So it's raised a few eyebrows here, that discussion around club over country raging in Australia at the moment.
Hello, everybody. This is Charu Sharma for All India Radio in Bangalore, where we're still locked up. Well, to be fair, there's a little bit of easing in terms of the timings, but we are still between a rock and a hard place, I suppose. But great to see the Indian women out there playing a test match after, 1,000 moons or so. And I must say, Alison, the rust is showing.
Oh, well, we're going to start with that, Charu, because it has been 7 years in the making, hasn't it? 2014, the last time India's women played a test match, and that was actually in England. So, yeah, both teams have donned the white. Really, a really special occasion for both teams. It's a one-off test match in Bristol. England themselves have only played 3 tests since 2014, all those against Australia. The opening day, well, it was pretty captivating test cricket, really. Heather Knight narrowly missed out on a century. She was out for 95 in what's her 100th game, captaining England across formats. And that dominated ball until the evening session, though, because India fought back and England lost 4 for 21 to the spin of Deepti Sharma and Sneh Rana. And India, in fact, delayed taking the new ball because spin was doing its thing. Big controversy beforehand, though, and that was because of the pitch. The match is being played on a used pitch. Gloucestershire's men played a T20 game on it 5 days before this match started, and the ECB were forced to apologise on the eve of the match. They said it shouldn't have happened and promised it wouldn't happen again. Well, here's what the England captain Heather Knight had to say about it.
I guess it's obviously not ideal. We'd much prefer to be on a fresh one, but it is what it is. And we don't know how it's going to play necessarily. Obviously, slightly different with it being used. We found out last week, which obviously we tried to get changed, but it was a little bit too late for that to happen. Obviously, it's unfortunate. It's not ideal. We'd much rather be on a fresh one, but we don't know how it's going to play yet. It still could play very well. Generally, at Bristol, you look at the deck sometimes and it looks not great, but it actually plays brilliantly. So, yeah, look, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. And we're obviously going to have to perform as best we can on the wicket we're given.
Behind the scenes, England are furious that this has happened. And, some mitigating factors the ECB highlighted. The test was added to the schedule very late, only in April after the rest of the season had been planned. There aren't many pitches on the Bristol Square that can be used for televised matches. But, it also isn't the first time that there's been an issue with a pitch for a women's test match. And at the 2019 test, I'm sure you'll both remember the Ashes test at Taunton. The Aussies played on a pitch that had been used for a World Cup game, albeit that was some 40 days before. But then the 2015 pitch at Canterbury was also criticised for just not being conducive to allowing the sort of cricket that the women need to be playing to create something of a spectacle and to have a competitive game. Now, Alister and Charu, this would never happen for a men's test match.
You can imagine the outcry, can't you, Ali, if this happened for a men's test match? And disappointing given that India is making its return to test match cricket after a long absence, and there are headlines around the quality of pitch. And it is part of a broader issue that affects the women's game, unfortunately, and has done, as you say, for many years. I think of even the pitches that they've played test match cricket on in Australia going back to 2017 at North Sydney Oval. It was an absolute run fest there when only 21 wickets were taken across 4 days. If you don't give them a good pitch to play on with a bit of speed in it, a bit of life in it, then you're sort of hamstringing the women who are trying to drive this forward. So very unfortunate. I think with the growth of the women's game, game. There's going to need to be a fair bit more investment. Certainly we're seeing that with Cricket Australia at the moment, investing in facilities for women's cricket. They need to be preparing test-specific wickets for test match cricket.
Yeah, well, I mean, on the face of it, there's no question that the optics are a show of disrespect to women's test cricket. That's for sure. You play on a used pitch. I have to say, though, that watching the days play, it didn't seem terrible. It seemed to be just fine. And if we didn't know that it was a used pitch, we probably gotten away with it. And the Indians certainly didn't mind because it was taking a bit of spin. To give it the due respect, I suppose you have to play it on a fresh pitch, no doubt about it. But if you're going to play once in 7 years, then a lot of people are going to wonder what kind of investment do we make in red ball cricket for women?
Yeah, you're right. It's everything that the ECB have been putting into the game. Almost sort of just a bit of a facepalm moment, like everything kind of just gets unravelled in one instant. They would refer to it as an oversight, because I do believe that behind the scenes, this wasn't the intention. England didn't want to use pitch, and actually it's been quite a notable change almost that both Heather Knight and the coach Lisa Kiteley in Aussie have felt confident, brave enough to actually criticise their own board. But there is so much going on behind the scenes. I think those in charge of women's cricket were just sort of mortified that this had been allowed to happen.
I think it'll be the last time it happens, Ali, because there has been a level of displeasure expressed at such a level that it has to be noticed. And the ECB has come out and expressed its own disappointment and essentially apologised for what took place. Perhaps previously the women's game didn't have the platform nor the profile for there to be this level of outrage, and that's a positive that it now does. I think certainly we'll never see this happen again.
Of course, another test match involving India is the Men's World Test Championship final against New Zealand. And, well, even the great Sachin Tendulkar has been talking about this one, and why not? And he says he would have loved to have played in a final like this, especially with the strength in depth of this current Indian side.
It makes a formidable unit, be it bowling or batting. We've got a well-balanced squad. We've got quality spinners in the team. We've got quality fast bowlers. So overall, if you see, there is a nice blend of senior players and youth. Their energy, enthusiasm, anxiousness, all these things, make a wonderful combination. One would have liked to have something like this, but years from now, there'll be multiple things happening. I'm so happy that I'm able to watch this. India is in the finals. New Zealand is a good side. They're going to challenge us. It's going to be good quality cricket that one will witness. Obviously, I would want India to win, but it's going to be quality cricket.
Well, Charu, what do you reckon then? The mix of senior players and youth in the Indian side, how are they going to stack up against New Zealand?
When Sachin speaks, the rest of us should just shut up and listen. But I have to admit, a blend of youth? No, there's only Shubman Gill, who we hope will get a spot, and Pant, who's got loads of experience, although he's relatively young. So It's a fabulous team, loads of experience, as he said. Yes, they're on the back foot because they haven't played in England. They're not match ready, as it were. They are going into this red ball cricket pretty cold compared to New Zealand. So that's the only major pound-for-pound situation that we'd give to New Zealand. Otherwise, the Indian pace attack is just fine. If you get Shami in there along with Bumrah and Ishant, which is possibly the combination, two fabulous spinners in Jadeja and Ashwin if they get to play, and then Pant downwards the batting. So the first innings of India when they bat is the key. If they can get to a decent score, they're going to give New Zealand a huge run for their money. And the spinners, I think, is the biggest difference between the two teams.
But New Zealand, Al, have had, call it a warm-up. It's competitive cricket, but a big, important, significant win over England. They're going to be pretty well prepped.
They've played very well, haven't they, during those test matches against England. Won the second test comfortably. Could have won the first test as well, New Zealand. And we'll get Kane Williamson back. We'll get Tim Southey back into that lineup as well and have acclimatised clearly very well to the conditions in England at the moment. It represents a challenge, naturally, for India, coming together, try to get themselves going straight away in that test match, given they haven't played together for a while. But this is an Indian side that I just trust implicitly now. I think of previous Indian sides, you regarded them as brilliant at home, but would travel overseas to places like Australia, maybe England, and not be able to adjust to the conditions. This is now an all-conditions Indian side. You've got very much this small nation in New Zealand seemingly punching above its weight with 5 million people up against the might of India with 1.4 billion. I think it's perfect for the Test Championship and the growth of it as a concept.
Alison, if you don't mind my standing up for the 1.4 billion people as well, I don't think the World Test Championship would have quite had the media around it were it not for India being in the final, because that's what the new home of cricket, isn't it? Or the heart of cricket in any rate. So
the New Zealand Herald shot by cricket for you, Charu.
I do want to say that it's the first. And I know where Sachin's coming from if he did indeed say that I'd love to have played in this first ever World Test Championship, because as I've said before, the first is always going to be historic. And whatever the lead up has been, and I believe there are noises now about trying to change the point system for the World Test Championship for the next cycle. And I know it's kind of confusing a lot of people, but the first ever does always draw a lot of attention.
Well, interesting talking about those point systems. And if we link it back to the women playing a test match, Mitali Raj ahead of the match suggested that, well, perhaps this multi-format series could be something that the top women's players play, the top women's nations play. And therefore there could be a women's world championship comprising ODIs and tests in a similar way to the men having a world test championship. That would certainly facilitate the playing of a test match at least per series.
In lighter vein, Alison, if test matches are to be included in this cycle, this is going to happen once in 15 years, yes?
What, the championship? Yeah, on past form. On past form, be very rare. But we'll be able to look back on the Men's World Test Championship final on next week's edition of Stumped. Make sure you join us for that.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Well, next on Stump, there was a hint of controversy in last week's second test between England and New Zealand at Edgbaston when Stuart Broad thought he'd taken the wicket of Devon Conway, caught behind for 22. Here's what happened.
In goes Broad, is there, and he bowls edged under. Has that carried? I think it has carried. England think it has, but Conway's staying rooted to the crease.
The umpires have come together and they're going to now give a soft signal, I would think, and they think it's not out.
They think it's not out. Stuart Broad still rowing with the umpires.
Freeze it there, please, yeah. And see the on-field soft signal is not out, and I can see the ball is on the ground also, so I'm ready for my decision on the big screen.
The crowd won't like it, but I think it's the right decision.
My decision is not out.
Well, Stuart Broad, of course, was the England bowler involved in that most recent incident, and he really felt strongly about this soft signal in the case of clear and fair catches. And I was able to have a really good chat with him, in fact, just after that incident had happened. So he'd had a night to sleep on it. And he just reckons that soft signal for catches isn't working and should be scrapped as soon as possible.
I think you only need to look at, well, Zach Crawley's reaction of knowing that the catch was under, his fingers were under the ball. Look at Joe Root and Bracey's reaction a yard away from the ball. You can see that catch was his fingers were under it. I think the umpires are in a really tricky position actually due to the rule that's there from the ICC. They have to give an opinion. They're going upstairs to use technology, but still have to give an opinion on whether they think it's out or not, although they're going upstairs because they don't know. And sometimes in Test cricket you can be 40 yards away as an umpire with a fielder in your way. One day cricket you can be 60, 70 yards away and have to make an opinion on that. So I actually think the ruling is putting the umpires in a completely unfair situation. And if you've got technology, if you're going upstairs to use technology, just say, look, the technology's there, you make a call on it because we don't know. So I think the soft signal we've got, in my opinion, I think we've got to get rid of. I think the ICC have got to get rid of that, and I wouldn't be waiting till September or October when the next ICC meeting is. I think someone just needs to come out now and go, it's a rule that's not working. Look at the pros and cons for it. The cons completely outweigh the pros. Let's get rid of it. Let's stop putting our staff and umpires under huge pressure and let the technology make the decision.
So Stuart Broad had clearly spent a lot of time that evening thinking about this and watching the footage back as well. Interested in your views, because it made me actually think about the evolution of the soft signal and that the rules around close catches, because as I said to Stuart then, more often than not, when a catch goes to the third umpire, I would have thought, and I'm sure just by my own thinking back and experience, that more often than not, TV cameras make catches look worse than they actually seem in real life. Don't know what your views are, Al and Charu, but I'd have thought you take out the soft signal, it's probably going to end up in more decisions being given out when, the bowlers and those on the field think, well, hang on, surely I thought it did carry.
I think that's certainly the case, Ali. And can I just say as well, I just want to clarify, that was Stuart Broad, the same Stuart Broad who in 2013, and we have long memories in Australia,
I know where this is going.
In the Ashes series, was caught at first slip off the bowling of Ashton Agar and then wandered up the wicket and did a spot of gardening and didn't walk. Is that the same bloke? The soft signal, I think we need to be a little bit careful here, because the umpires are the key officiators within the game, and we don't want to diminish their role too much. I just think there needs to be a bit of common sense applied here. So whether that is just that there are the odd occasions where the umpire says, well, I'm not sure. So there is no soft signal. It goes up to the third umpire in that instance. But it's inconclusive so often that the third umpire can't actually determine, based on the broadcast footage, which varies depending on who's doing the broadcasting of matches around the world. The 2D footage, as you say, isn't very conclusive often and can make it look as if a legitimate catch wasn't a catch as well. So I think it's fair if the umpire on the field, as the key decision maker within the game, has some sort of influence over the decision in that case. And if they feel like, in the spur of the moment, to the naked eye, that it was most likely out or not out, I think that should bear some weight. But I also think there should be situations, and I think, Charu, that Virat Kohli has suggested this, that there should be occasions where the umpires on the field just say, we don't know, it's inconclusive, up to you to make a determination.
For starters, let's go back to when this whole I've taken the catch and I know best because I'm the cricketer here. And what do umpires know was started by Michael Slater, Alison, just to get back on Alister, because when he was in India and claimed the catch, which was clearly not a catch and was proved so on television, to my mind, rationalization of the fact that cricketers don't always know best.
What's the role of the umpire? Are we completely diminishing the role of the umpire in the game? Is the umpire still required, or are we just going to send it to a robot? Is there a human element? What does the umpire do on the field if they have no role in the decision-making process? What's the purpose of an umpire? I still think they're a key element of the game, and they do. I think they have a level of prestige, and it needs to be accepted that they're a trusted professional out there, and they understand the rules of the game very clearly, and they make the decisions based on those rules and what they've seen to the best of their ability.
Give us nothing to talk about, though, wouldn't it, if everything was technology? We love a controversial decision. We love it, let's be honest. Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped here on All India Radio. You can keep in touch with us throughout the week on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport. Make sure you use the hashtag BBC Stumped. My thanks to Charu Sharma and Alister Nicholson, and of course to you all for listening. Stay safe, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.